I have to say, on a circuit that doesn't reward finesse, this circuit is all about blind commitment, heavy braking from high speed. It's got one interesting corner which is banked, so it's kind of line locked. The rest of it is just how brave you want to be in traffic, going through very, very quick S's and then breaking into that last corner, a very wide entry hairpin leading onto the finishing straight. It's not a circuit where I think the great drivers would give 100% on a Friday when there's so much traffic out there. I think Fernando Alonso summed it up when he said, only 20 cars on the track, but I seem to have passed 26 in 1 minute. And it was like that. I mean, it's just cars everywhere. And a lot of them out of the way, staying offline, but nonetheless being in the way if you're coming through in 6th, 7th gear through a blind left or right-hander towards the end of the lap. I said from day one with this circuit when it first appeared that there's not a lot of skill required in that. It's all commitment. I say skill, relative skill amongst the Grand Prix drivers. Obviously there is compared with them and us. But amongst the Grand Prix drivers, it's not a massively skill-defining circuit. It's all about commitment. And to some extent, it's about your track position and where you're actually placed. And that we saw some very, very near misses today. And I hope we get through the weekend. I've said this every time we go to Jeddah. I just hope we get through the weekend without something serious happening. We did have some incidents as it happened. We'll get onto those in a second. But McLaren-Mercedes, absolutely brilliant today. Lando Norris, yesterday, I think, said the McLaren is no rocket ship. I'd love to see Max's face after he drives it and realizes it's not that quick. Very weird thing for Lando to say. Disrespectful, I think, to the engineers that have produced this rocket ship. Apart from anything else, they love to hear their driver telling everybody how good the car is, I would have thought. And then you'd also think that it makes Oscar Piastri look even better, because if he's doing that in a car that isn't a rocket ship around Bahrain, then how good is Oscar? Having said that, Lando had a good day. The car looked good. He was always out there waiting for the right moment. A couple of laps got ruined because of traffic on soft tyres. And by the end, he was out there on his scrub set of softs, having had traffic on his quick run, going quicker still. That shows how much margin McLaren have. Just brilliant. And then on heavy fuel, look at these numbers. Max Verstappen was the first to go onto mediums, having done his run, which made him P3 for the afternoon. So he had a clear track for about 5 laps, and everybody else was still faffing around in the pits putting on the medium. So he was out there 34.8, 34.7, 34.9, 35.2. Oscar Piastri puts the mediums on. First lap 33.7, second lap 34.1. Just as a reminder, Max's quickest lap 34.7. So straight away, Oscar a second quicker on fuel, and Lando not far away from that as well. So yeah, McLaren just in another class at the moment, despite what Lando will say about it not being a rocket ship. But Max P3, I suppose that's something in terms of going into the weekend. The car today, this morning, brought the same comments from Max that we heard throughout Bahrain. Couldn't turn the car, had no confidence, couldn't do anything about the balance, just totally unpredictable on quick corners. And of course, all that adds up to efficiency, downforce efficiency, aero efficiency, because look at the speed trap numbers. Speed trap is just before that last corner. They've been flat out in 8th. The track's curving slightly, but it's a realistic picture, snapshot of where they are in terms of speed through the air. Max Verstappen 3.34, not quite as quick as Lewis Hamilton. I think Lewis got a toe on the lap, so Max as quick as anybody through the speed trap, 3.34. McLaren's never over 3.30, and that's just sheer downforce, and they're still much quicker on the lap, even though they're slower, obviously, on that last finishing straight. And that's the downforce that McLaren have got. Maybe it's flexi wings, maybe it's something else. We'll find out from the Spanish Grand Prix when they're going to get a lot tougher with the measurement of flexi wings. A lot of talk of it out there at the moment, but if it is flexi wings, you would imagine that the car would perhaps be a bit quicker on the straight. I don't know. Anyway, Max Verstappen P3. Charles Leclerc looked better than the time represented. They went round a lot of traffic for the Ferraris, Charles Leclerc, but he always looked a lot quicker than Lewis Hamilton, I thought. And Lewis has said now, which is what we've been saying all along, that he doesn't know how Charles drives the car with it being so pointy. And of course the answer is, you used to do that, Lewis, but you're not doing it now. And he's got into this thing that he had at Mercedes, that he needs the back end to be stable, and it ain't going to happen probably throughout 2025. Maybe, I don't know, who knows for next year, but I can't imagine Ferrari ever having a stable back end. They haven't had one for about 3 years, so why should they have one now? But yeah, Charles right on the edge, George Russell-esque, and looking like he's, there's nothing more to come. But again, traffic, a huge issue. Carlos Sainz in the Williams Mercedes, looking really good, driving well. He's one of the guys had a very near miss going through the blind fast S's at the end of the lap. I think it was Charles Leclerc was online, ironically, and Carlos had a big moment there, just avoiding him. So Carlos looking pretty good, P5. Then Yuki Tsunoda in P6. I think he's feeling a bit more confident about life, having got into Q3 in Bahrain and had a reasonable weekend. And he was sort of 3/10 away from Max, but he effectively brought FP2, Free Practice 2, to a premature close when he did what Lando did a couple of years ago, turned in to the apex of the last corner, misjudged it, hit it with the left front, and then broke a steering arm, then went to and crashed into the wall on the outside and brought out the red. Now, the interesting thing about the Yuki Tsunoda shunt, and I'm not saying this as a Monday morning quarterback, I'm saying it because it was a real thing. We saw Yuki going into that corner in FP1 this morning, and he was the only driver I saw who does one of these weird Sergio Perez-like turning right a little bit on the steering before you then turn left. He goes one of these and then just to sort of get a slightly wider approach in. I don't know whether it's like a security blanket thing. It's really weird. I mean, it's not as if he's a rally driver or something. And he did exactly the same thing when he had the shunt in FP2. They never showed, you saw it once. You saw him doing that. And then he goes in, he misjudges the apex. He's got a bit of understeer, puts on a little bit more lock. And he's got load going one way, load going the other way. And I would be willing to bet that the reason he misjudged that and got that understeer is because he went slightly to the right before he went left. And I'm amazed that the engineers didn't get onto him about that in the break between the two sessions, because with these cars, the last thing you want is weight transfer one way and then weight transfer the other if you can avoid it. And Yuki was doing that. It's like a habit it's just like a habit you get into if you're in golf with the yips, and also on the takeaway if you flex the wrist one way or the other. Obviously, that's not good for the takeaway in terms of the club face position. And it's a similar thing. It's just like a security blanket thing where he goes boom, boom, like that. And Perez used to do it, most notably under braking into Lake at Spa. And it's something that is never brought into the sporting code in terms of moving the car under braking. They say, oh, well, yeah, that's part of the corner. But it isn't. They shouldn't be doing that. And Yuki did that. And I think that's probably why he crashed. Anyway, that brought practice to a premature close. But he was going quite well. But I suspect he'll still be doing that tomorrow with the rebuilt car. P7, George Russell. Yeah, he didn't have a great run, but he did look good when he was out. And I've still got this gut feeling that he's going to have a really, really good race. It's a George Russell sort of circuit, got to say. Imagine if the race turns out to be George, the two McLarens, and Max sort of hovering around as well. We could have a great Grand Prix ahead of us. I say great Grand Prix. It can never be a great Grand Prix on a circuit like this. But what it could be is a dramatic race. Let's put it that way. And George, very spectacular in everything he was doing. And regular viewers of this channel will know that I've been saying about Kimi Antonelli from the start of the year that he's looked really good on mainly slow corners. Very, very good. Short corners, very, very good in the way he's getting the car in, braking and everything else. But I've been quite nervous about him on fast corners, particularly medium fast corners as well. And that was exactly the story we saw today. He looked very scary, I thought, on the medium and high-speed corners. Had several moments over the curbs. I mean, if this was a circuit without a lot of curb and without a lot of runoff area, and it was just concrete walls, hate to think. But he doesn't look confident. He did hit the wall coming quite hard as well, coming out of the last corner. Last corner, you could say, well, that's a slow corner, but it's not my definition of a slow corner in the context of what Kimi does really well, because it's not a sort of corner where you can really benefit from having that great feel for the front end and getting in early. It's such a wide entry there. It's a bit like the hairpin at COTA in Austin. It's so wide, there's only one way to take it. A bit like also the hairpin at, not wide, but again, the constant radius thing in Suzuka as well. So yeah, he hit the wall coming out there, and he doesn't look that confident on the fast corners. And I wonder how Mercedes will then handle this going into the weekend for him. They probably think, oh yeah, he's just new. It'll all come to him. But I think there's an issue there in terms of his slow corner talent, which is unbelievably good, and how quick these cars are on fast corners. And he can't do what he wants to do with the car on very fast corners. Whereas George, of course, is boom, 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 like that. Blink and you miss George. Well, sparks everywhere, of course, as well. Pierre Gasly was quickest this morning. He's driving so well in the Alpine, and he's really loving working with these new race engineer as well. They swapped engineers around after the Chinese Grand Prix weight drama, and they're really gelling, and that's a great thing for Alpine. Not so good for Jack Doohan today. He didn't look bad, but again, he was using a lot of road. Looked a little bit Kimi Antonelli-esque through the quick corners, and so yeah, I just can't speak highly enough about the rocket ship called the McLaren-Mercedes, the MCL 39, and what a job Rob Marshall and the team have done there, and Pete Prod. Just every circuit they go to, just right there. Oscar Piastri, a scratchy day, but then again, it's only a Friday and it's a very scratchy circuit in terms of making mistakes and avoiding big dramas. That's the main thing, I think, going into Jeddah. Avoid the big drama with the traffic and everything else. Qualifying's not going to be easy. Q1 tomorrow is going to be a drama for sure. All those cars on track, Fernando. And just before we go, a very quick word again about the Lotus 98T based watch produced by REC Watches, using some of the original aluminium from the plenum tubes on that actual car raced by Ayrton Senna in 1986, reforged, and it's part of the face and the back of the 98T REC watch. Amazing thing to have. I'm mentioning it again. I'm thinking now of Gerard Ducarouge, who designed that car, and what a great guy Gerard was. He was an absolute racer, the antithesis in many ways of modern Formula One, which is all about committees and subcommittees and subcommittees. Gerard was his own man, did his own thing. And to Peter War's credit, back in 1983, back end of 83, when he hired Gerard, it was on the basis that, Gerard said, I'm only going to come to Lotus if I can do the whole thing myself. It'll be my car. I don't want to have to answer to anybody. I'm not going to bring anybody with me either. I'm a lone wolf. I'm going to be doing this on my own. I'll use the Saint-Cyr wind tunnel in the south of France for it. And he arrived sure enough, at Ketteringham Hall in Norfolk, and just like a whirlwind, filled the void in many ways that had been left by the passing of Colin Chapman at the end of 1982. Lotus had gone into a bad time after that, splitting their efforts with two cars, a turbo car and a Ford Cosworth car, both on Pirellis, one driven by Elio, the turbo car, the Cosworth car by Nigel. Both cars very troublesome. And when Gerard joined, Lotus were in a slump, and Colin had gone. And nobody knew what the future of the team was going to be. And nobody knew what Gerard Ducarouge was going to be able to do there. A Frenchman suddenly arriving at Lotus. Of course, he'd had a brilliant record with Ligier in 79, 80, and then gone to Alfa Romeo and done a fabulous job for Alfa as well, particularly for Bruno Giacomelli and Andrea De Cesaris, who was so quick in 1982. But here he was. Jabby Krombach actually put Gerard Ducarouge with Peter War. And Peter, to his credit, as I say, allowed Gerard to come in and just have a clean sheet of paper and get on with it. So the first thing Gerard did was, two things. The first thing he did was come in with his Delsey briefcase that he always used to carry around, even in the Ligier days, and introduce himself to everybody, and just this whirlwind arriving. And of course, when he got to the drawing office, Tim Densham and Steve Hallam, the two race engineers, thought, wow, look at the briefcase. He's got the Alpha drawings in there, mega. And eventually opened the briefcase, and inside was a big duty-free 200-pack of Marlboro cigarettes, as it would be for Gerard, nothing else. Then he spent a bit of time decanting all the Marlboros into John Player special packets, which everybody had a laugh about. And then he got down to business. And very quickly, he decided that the way forward was to adopt the 1982 Lotus 91, designed by Martin Ogilvy. Very good car. Nigel finished third in the Brazilian Grand Prix that year. Elio De Angelis won the Austrian Grand Prix in that incredible finish with Keke Rosberg. That was the Lotus 91 Cosworth car. Gerard said, that is the car, and that is the car I'm going to put the Renault turbo engine into the back of. Let's go motor racing. And he set himself a 5-week goal to have the car designed and ready to go. And he did it in 5 weeks. I don't think that'll ever be repeated in the history of Formula One. And I tell that story because the 94T, the car that appeared in the 1983 British Grand Prix at Silverstone, which Elio then promptly put on the second row, and Nigel didn't do any laps at all in practice because it had a chronic electronic problem, and they had to replace the loom on Saturday night, which they did. He went out at the warm-up Sunday morning. For the first time that weekend, he actually had all the cylinders firing, and went out, the V6 went out, and was reasonably quick in the warm-up. I think it's about 10th quickest. And I remember chatting to Nigel that morning. I was still a journalist at Autocar, and went up to him and said, what's it like? And he said, oh, I've got a race car. For the first time in 6 months, we got a race car. It's got balance, it's got grip, it's brilliant. And Nigel then sat down with Steve Hallam and did a setup for the race based on 3 laps in the Sunday morning warm-up, and finished 4th in the Grand Prix from, I don't know where he was, I don't know, 12th or something, maybe more, 17th, I think. And that was the turning point for Lotus. He then finished 3rd in the European Grand Prix at Brands Hatch. And I tell that story because that 1983 Gerard Ducarouge car then evolved into the 1984 Ducarouge car on Pirellis again, that was very competitive in the hands of Nigel and Elia De Angelis. And then Ayrton Senna joined Lotus for 85, and it was an evolution again of that car. And that, of course, gave Senna his first Grand Prix win in Portugal in 85. And then, of course, it became the 1986 98T Renault that we're talking about with in the context of RAC watches. So you can have a little piece of that history, a little piece on your wrist, and details, of course, of how you can get onto the website RAC Watches in the description of the video below. So the McLaren show presumably will continue tomorrow. The point of interest, of course, is whether Lando can stay on top of the precipice this weekend and how near Oscar's going to get to him. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Big thanks to Jetcraft, to OEM Exclusive, and to TrackNinja. See you tomorrow.